Story 1. Being debt-free releases many of the burdens that a lot of us face, opening possibilities to pursue the things we want instead of working our lives away. Story 2. You can be sad and rich, but you will never worry about money, which is a major cause of misery, especially right now. It is a significant advantage. Story 3. Money gives you stability. When you have stability, it is easier to focus on and do things that make you happy. Story 4. Kind of yes. It can take away a lot of stressors like home and food insecurity. Also, it means you can afford to take a couple of days off if you are sick. There was a study in 2010 that said global satisfaction levels increased with annual salary but plateaued around $75,000. Before that level, earning more money would make you happier. This happiness is likely due to factors like more stability in housing, money for hobbies, a more stable job that offers sick time, having a vehicle if it suits you, or a secure method of public transit. Accounting for inflation, that is about $110,000 per year now. Earning more than that does not add much to people's life satisfaction. If people still are not happy after that level, there is likely something internal that needs to be addressed with therapy or a life change of some kind. Story 5. Cannot completely buy happiness, but I personally think it makes life easier and gives you more options in various areas, thus making you happier and more satisfied on average. Story 6. Whoever said money cannot buy happiness does not know where to shop. It is a little like air. When you need it, nothing else will work. Story 7. I guess it depends on the person, but for me, it will make me happy because I can buy and do things I want using the money. Story 8. Absolutely. With little money, working all the time, therefore no time to do what makes me happy. Losing sleep. With money, now have time to focus on myself and become a better version of myself. Less stress about paying bills. Story 9. As a financial advisor, my experience is that money enhances people's character. Give a good and happy person wealth, and they will be even happier. Give a miserable person money, and they will just become more miserable. Overall, money is a stress reliever. If you do not have to constantly stress about bills, you are freer to enjoy life. Story 10. I don't think it buys happiness, but I think that it relieves people of their stressors, making it easier to be happy. However, money problems are not the only thing that causes people to be unhappy. You cannot buy friends, family, a good job, or similar things. Story 11. I think it removes obstacles that cause stress. Without money, you have to continue working at a job you are probably tired of, while living somewhere you likely do not like. Eating food daily that you wish were better, and dealing with healthcare that is probably very expensive and low quality. You have to worry about your children's future housing and education, as these things are now almost unattainable for average people. Money will not solve all problems, but it will certainly solve many issues that affect us deeply. Story 12. While money is not a requirement for happiness, a certain level of financial stability is necessary for well-being. Therefore, I must say yes, money can contribute to happiness. For example, I am overwhelmed by debt, and many of the things I want to do in life require time and effort that cannot be afforded without a livable income. My life is barely holding together, and having enough money would resolve many issues. It is possible to be happy without a lot of money, but there is a threshold of poverty where the lack of money makes life very painful and stressful. Story 13. Money buys security, which is typically a prerequisite of happiness. But does money literally purchase happiness? No, I don't think so. Look at Elon Musk. Does he strike you as being a particularly happy individual? Many such cases exist. Story 14. No, because you learn that money cannot buy you everything. You start to focus on material things and forget the people who were there with love. Money will never buy you happiness. People make you happy, not money. Story 15. People often misunderstand and twist the idea, making it seem like a physical mound of money that cannot realistically bring happiness. Others give examples of actors, singers, or entertainers who lead depressing, drug-addled lives, or rich people getting older and becoming depressed. If you have enough money not to worry and to buy and maintain the lifestyle of your dreams, that can be true happiness. This does not mean that those without money are depressed or incapable, but simply that in today's world, Money can buy what equates to happiness in some way or another. Getting a Ferrari, however, is not the cure. Story 16. I do information technology for the ultra-rich in Los Angeles. Money can provide the foundation of a stable life that allows you to live free of worry about rent, food, or any unexpected expense. However, and this is a significant observation I have made, money itself will not help you find a deeper sense of happiness on its own. I have worked with people making 7 to 8 figures a year, and they seem miserable. They have all the money in the world, yet they appear just as bored, depressed, angry, or bitter. A fundamentally unhappy or mean person will remain that way, no matter how much money they have. Story 17. Yes, not temporarily, but for the rest of my life, because money is a tool we use to survive and can be used to get the things that you want or need. Story 18. A colleague sitting in front of me complains about the supervisor every day, sounding very sincere. The next day, my supervisor called me in for a talk. Story 19. It does not guarantee happiness, but as someone who grew up very poor, I can tell you this. I am now 48 and have plenty of money, and my stress level is non-existent. When I was first starting out on my own, my stress was never-ending. Minor problems could ruin my entire day, and not having much choice in what you could afford to eat really damaged your mental state. Money is important for a reason. Story 20. To a point, yes, it takes the edge off stress. But after that, it is more about how you live, not what you have. Story 21. If all I had to do was practice mindfulness and cultivate my friendships, I would be one happy person. Instead, I am a wage worker, but I still practice mindfulness and cultivate my relationships. For me, it would literally solve all of my problems. I could afford a home, therapy, and everything I need to be happy. I already love myself, have a great family, and a great social circle. I have some addictions I am working on that could be solved through therapy and medication, which I cannot afford right now. I cannot afford a house, which would be solved if I could afford one. I would not quit my job because I love it. So yes, I would be much happier if I were wealthy. I think people heavily underestimate how much resource security and happiness are correlated. If you are reading this, you likely live in a capitalist country, so money equals resource security. Personally, and this is not an insult, just an opinion, I think the saying money will not buy you happiness is an incredibly naive perspective. You can be poor and happy. I am. But to say you would not be happier if you were not poor seems strange to me. My theory about why this mindset is so popular is that we are uncomfortable with how society functions and subconsciously do not want to admit our lives revolve around money. But it does. Story 22, to an extent, and then it does not necessarily. Would a millionaire be happier as a billionaire? Story 23. For the poor, yes, because it can remove financial stresses that cause unhappiness. Other than that, I would say no. Once you are comfortable and have your needs met, even more money does not feel significant. Story 24. I have been rich and I have been poor. Let me tell you, the problems you have when you are rich are just the leftovers of all the problems you had when you were poor. Story 25. Money does not buy happiness. Money does alleviate many aspects of life in the United States that cause stress for people without enough money for their circumstances. Story 26. Poverty breeds depression, suffering, and crime. Money can help. However, happiness can mean many things. There are wealthy people who are angry all the time. Story 27. No, it does not. However, it can buy fun, speed, freedom, and leisure, which are similar. Not worrying about money removes a burden. Story 28. Most of my problems could be solved by money, namely nearly all of the active stressors in my life such as poverty, hunger, homelessness, and dehydration. Story 29. Well, it depends on what makes you happy. If a 20-year-old model makes you happy, Ferrari, fine food, and attention make you happy, then yes. Story 30. You know what makes me happy? Getting as much sleep as I want and spending the day how I want. You know what is stopping me from achieving that? Not having enough money. The thing is, money provides diminishing returns on happiness. Nas has a line, "Lumbo's got average on me." Once you reach a certain point where you can afford anything you want, then more money will not make you happy. But if you are poor and struggling, yes, money can buy you happiness. Story 31. It absolutely does not. Money buys comfort. People confuse comfort with happiness. Source. I was homeless for much of my young adult life and now make over $200,000 per year. Story 32. Yes. I used to be in debt, was stressed out, and hated waking up and going to work. Now I work remotely, do not worry about money, and my company is successful. I have no stress really. Money has fixed many issues I used to struggle with. Story 33. Purchase is not the correct word. Money may or may not solve many problems. When problems are solved, it can lead to being worry-free and happy. For those who have money, sometimes it can get lonely. Story 34. Money does not buy happiness. Having money eliminates a major burden of life that restricts someone's ability to freely pursue happiness. Though, not needing to worry about survival lets you focus on finding meaning, though that can be even harder. Story 35. You did not hear the talk by Dan Pena then. However, you can still be broke and happy. Look at me, broke, and I still have a smile on my face every day. Story 36. Money won't bring your parents back from the dead or mend the relationship you lost, but it will set you up like the life you want without ever having to worry financially. I don't know about you, but money is one of the biggest things in most of our lives that brings us down. Story 37. Of course, except health. If you can travel to happy places, do your favorite hobbies, get a massage whenever you like, eat whatever you like, and do that with your loved ones, what else is there to be sad about? The only problem would be health limitations, but at least you would still have money for treatment. Story 38. It buys things that make me happy. Vacations with my family, materials for my hobbies with my children, groceries for meals I enjoy cooking as much as I enjoy eating. Money plays a role in nearly all happiness, whether you like to believe it or not. Story 39. It does to a point. There was even a study. So science, I believe in science. Story 40. Money brings comfort, which greatly contributes to true happiness if you have a naturally good heart. Money will not make you truly or overall happy. It can create happy and fun moments, but actual happiness comes from contentment with yourself, your life, and inner peace, which cannot be bought. Story 41. Honestly, it depends on the person. Personally, I enjoy nice things, and nice things do make me happy. Story 42. Money buys discretionary time as a way to find happiness, but you cannot buy back the time you have already used. Story 43. You cannot buy happiness, and no one sells it, but you can buy many things that make you happy. However, you also have to understand that money and random things you want cannot completely make you happy. It is just one part of a fulfilling life. Ultimately, for me, money buys time, and I can spend that time on the things that really matter to me. Story 44. The short answer is yes to a certain point. I think once a person is making over $120,000 a year, the happiness money can buy becomes negligible. Having said that, Epictetus proves it is not necessary. Story 45. If you buy it, I have been poor and a millionaire. I would never be poor again under any circumstances. I am much happier and live my life better. Story 46. For most people who are not billionaires or millionaires, money buys freedom, not necessarily happiness. However, happiness often comes from being free of crippling debt and other burdens. Oligarchs and those who are extremely wealthy use money as a weapon or a source of power. It is too sad to continue living this way. Story 47. People who say money does not buy happiness, in my opinion, are just being pedantic. It is like they are trying to point out that happiness is not a product with a price tag that you can simply buy. That is not really the point people make when they say a lot of money would make them happy. Most people have no trouble finding happiness. The problem they face is the major barriers to happiness caused by financial stress. If you can remove that, for the vast majority of people, there is nothing to impede their happiness. People who have wealth but are depressed are missing the point when they say money cannot buy happiness. I pity them, but their situation could be worse. Story 48. Of course it does, just not directly. When I was broke and struggling to pay rent, I was miserable and constantly wondered how I was going to make it. Now that I am financially stable and have a little extra, I was able to go to a concert a few months ago and spend time with friends at a restaurant every so often. Story 49. Does golfing make me happy? Yes. Do I need money to buy equipment for golfing? Yes. Money equals resources to perform my hobbies, which equals happiness. Story 50. Not even in the slightest. The only people who think you can buy happiness with money are usually either very poor and do not know any better, or overly materialistic wealthy people who value their lives based solely on the things they can buy. Happiness is just a state of mind. People who believe money will bring them happiness will find themselves disappointed if they ever get a chance to find out for sure. Story 51. The way I would describe it: money does not buy happiness, it buys possibilities. If you are wealthy, you have the money to take advantage of various opportunities that come your way. The more money you have, the more opportunities there are to explore. However, those opportunities do not guarantee happiness. They are simply opportunities. You could travel to Ibiza, Greece, or London, have life-changing experiences, meet new people, experience the local culture, and change your outlook. Alternatively, you could have a nice meal at a resort, take a few photos, and still feel sad and lonely, dwelling on your problems and not living in the moment. Many factors contribute to people feeling unhappy or stressed, often related to financial difficulties. Having money can solve some of these issues, but even if financial stress disappeared, that does not necessarily mean you would be happy, just less stressed. If your entire life's purpose is to work to survive and provide for your family, what happens if someone else provides for your family? What will you do instead of factory work or holding 2 part-time jobs? With extra free time, will you do something productive? Or will you direct your energy towards self-destructive behavior? Many people who win the lottery lose it all within a few years. Many who retire early, myself included, sometimes regret it because they find themselves wasting time and feeling unhappy, even if they have financial security. Story 52. You do not need a superiority complex to understand that being financially free and in a better place than most of society makes you happy. Story 53. I have been poor and I have been rich, and then I became poor again. I was always happier while poor. When I became wealthy, I could afford everything and did not have to worry as much, but my life felt completely pointless. Not only that, but I had a lot of responsibility, more than when I was poor. It was nice getting what I wanted until I wanted more than I could afford. When you always want, even when you become rich, you will always want more. Story 54. Yes, because I am poor right now. I have been homeless. It is the worst depression I have ever experienced. I was much happier when I had money. I was never rich, but could at least afford a couple of trips a year and my own maintenance expenses. That was enough then. Story 55. Sort of. Money can stave off many of the barriers to happiness. Money can buy temporary happiness. Money makes achieving happiness easier. But money cannot buy real, lasting happiness. Story 56. Ultimately, yes. One of the biggest stresses in life is not being able to afford a good home, a reliable vehicle, healthcare, and food on the table. Without that worry, it adds a bit of relief to life. Story 57. Money can bring material enjoyment, but higher spiritual enjoyment requires a commitment to passion. Story 58. It does buy happiness to some extent, but not always though. Money cannot buy love, time, health, or peace. Story 59. Money buys convenience, peace of mind, and accessibility. Money may not directly buy happiness, but it eliminates many burdens and worries that cause unhappiness. Story 60. No, but it removes many problems that cause sadness and also creates more opportunities for happiness. Story 61. I am in so much debt, it is actually hilarious. If I did not have to worry about gas versus food, I would be in a much better spot. Give me $30,000, $14,000 to be out of debt, and I can then use the remaining $16,000 for some minor things. I need a vacuum, and I can get some spoons and other items. Story 62. Yes, totally. It is a completely false narrative by wealthy people. They create the most ridiculous, non-existent situations to make you feel like being normal is better and that having money leads to a more chaotic and worse life. In real life, we keep longing for the money these rich individuals make. Story 63. It buys happiness for those who are well-adjusted, know what they want, and simply need the financial freedom to get there. Of course, there is a lot of nuance between those lines. Story 64. Only a well-off person trying to buy love would say that money does not buy happiness. Anyone who struggles even a little will tell you that money does not have to buy happiness, but money is almost the root cause of everything that makes you unhappy. You need money to have a nice house, to eat well, and to travel. If you are always barely making it, just one windfall can give you the time and energy to work on the things you want to. Go places you want to go, see things you want to see, and spend time with the people you want to spend time with. The line "money does not buy happiness" must have been made by someone who thought they were being clever while living in complete peace in their 5-bedroom New York penthouse apartment. Story 65. Absolutely. Every wealthy person who says it doesn't should spend a few years living on minimum wage and see how miserable they become. Story 66. Buy happiness? No. Many wealthy people are still miserable, and some even commit suicide. However, money can eliminate problems and stress that make happiness impossible. Can also buy pleasure, of course. Story 67. Yes, it does. You can avoid saying it directly, but it basically leads to happiness. That does not mean bad things cannot happen when you are rich. However, that is not exclusive to being rich. That is just life. Bad things can always happen in life. I have read news in my country where even a beggar was robbed of their money. Story 68. Not having money brings you negative happiness. Having money can bring you back to zero by removing money problems, but money alone will not make you happy. Also, people who have the skills to make a lot of money often lack the skill to be content and happy with what they have, so they often find themselves in self-imposed suffering. Story 69. It buys freedom, which could definitely equate to happiness. The saying, "money cannot buy happiness," was probably coined to keep the poor placated. Story 70. I think money cannot buy happiness. Happiness is created by God. Money is man-made. Happiness is purer, and money offers many choices. Story 71. To anyone who says money doesn't buy happiness, direct message me to send your paychecks. I will gladly liberate you from your money. Story 72. For me, yes. Being able to afford college without any worries about the expenses and actually pursuing my dream course would immediately make me happy. Plus, being debt-free is wonderful. Story 73. It does, in a way, because it releases you from the 24/7 grind and gives you the freedom to enjoy life doing what you want. Some people love that, but some cannot handle it and do not know what to do with themselves. Also, there are no worries over bills, you can buy things without even thinking about it, and there is a lot less stress. Story 74. No. However, it does buy comfort, convenience, and relieves almost all stress related to trying to survive or thrive in the capitalist world we live in. Story 75. Money can buy many things that can reduce your stress, which in turn can help you feel happier. So, in a way, sadly, yes. Story 76. If money cannot solve the problem that is making you unhappy, then it will not. For example, if your favorite family member died, money cannot bring them back. However, if money is all that stands between you and your dream, such as a house big enough for all your children to have space, then yes, it can help. One cannot simply say money does not buy happiness. Story 77. It depends on what happiness means for different people. For some, wealth itself is happiness. For others, specific things such as food, certain possessions, or status bring happiness. Those things can be bought with money. Therefore, money can buy happiness for them. Story 78. Money might not be able to buy happiness, but without money, you are not happy. Think for a second. Without money, you cannot even afford food, clothes, or rent. Story 79. If you are materialistic or you want stability or you want more than you have, then yes, money can buy happiness. Story 80. I do not know. I have never met an unhappy rich person myself. I am not saying they do not exist, but I am pretty sure a large majority are very happy with their lives. Story 81. Currently unhappy in a stressful job that earns a lot of money. I keep thinking once I have enough money, about 10% more, I will get out of the rat race and have time and money, but who knows? Story 82. I could finally spend time doing the things I love. I could write, properly learn cooking, focus on my health, go to the gym once a day, and just go out and explore nature. But yeah, sure, money does not buy happiness. Having to work 40 hours a week does, doesn't it? Story 83. Yes. Money can solve many problems that cause people misery. Less misery means increased room for happiness. Story 84. The happiest moments of my life were when I wasn't rich, but I had enough money to do many things I enjoyed, such as going out, taking trips, and going on holidays. Now, I cannot do these things, and I am definitely unhappy. Story 85. Maybe not literally, but having enough money would get me as close to happiness as I could possibly get. No more worrying and stressing about not being able to afford anything anymore. No more sacrificing my physical and mental health to work. Actually being able to afford a place to live. Having all that might somehow unlock the ability to become happy, but if not, it's still a lot better than not having those. Story 86. No money doesn't buy happiness. Money buys time. Having time to do the things you love gives you happiness. Story 87. There are many people with wealth who are not happy, but on average, the self-reported happiness of wealthy people is higher than that of others. Story 88. Money buys stress relief. When you do not have stress, there is more room for happiness. Money will not directly create happiness, but it allows you an easier opportunity to find it yourself. Story 89. Yes, I could do things I love. I would never get tired of them. I could experience more, do more, enjoy more. Instead of having to scrape by and window shop, I could actually enjoy life. In my opinion, the only people for whom money does not buy happiness are those who are not happy with themselves, have no passions, no interests, and no love in their life. Story 90. Yes, being financially stable, having a roof over your head, and being able to afford food and healthcare takes away so much stress. Story 91. My life would be better if I had a partner with a decent amount of money and who is comfortable being with a minimalist boyfriend. Story 92. True happiness? No. But a level of security and reliability that you don't realize is so good for mental health until you don't have it? Yes. Millionaires have plenty of issues to deal with, I'm sure, but they'll never appreciate how unimportant they are compared to not being able to feed your children or keep a roof over their heads. Oh, your company did not make quite as much profit last quarter as usual? Well, get down off the ledge. To scale, that's like me losing 50 pounds in the street, and nobody is going to rally around me and take it from elsewhere to pay me back. Story 93. Only to a certain extent. A lot of the day-to-day stress can be eliminated. Worrying about your bills, being able to afford food, or sometimes travel. Once those daily expenses are easily covered, your life becomes much more comfortable. However, wealthy people still face many of the problems that poor people have. Heartbreak, divorce, death of pets and family members, severe illness. Some things cannot be escaped regardless of wealth. Story 94. I will say that this is the kind of question someone asks on Reddit not because they genuinely care about the answer, but because they are looking for engagement. Anyway, because I do feel like engaging with it, I would argue that money does not directly buy happiness, but certain levels or thresholds of money can greatly ease negative pressure, making it simpler for someone to pursue things that actually make them happy. For example, travel and exploration make a lot of people happy but cost money. So if you have enough money to pay the bills and still have enough left over for travel, the travel is the thing giving the happiness, but the money has made it possible. Story 95. I can tell you from experience that money does not buy happiness, but it does buy a more comfortable level of unhappiness. Story 96. Money does not buy happiness, but it buys freedom. That freedom can make life a lot less stressful. Story 97. It sure does. Anyone who doesn't believe money buys happiness doesn't know how to spend it properly. Story 98. I think it is different for everyone. It depends on why you are unhappy. Personally, I am unhappy because I do not have any friends or a partner, and money cannot buy that. If I were rich, I might quit my job, which would make me even more depressed because my only social contacts are job-related. But I would also buy a house, and maybe that would distract me for a bit. Additionally, I would search for the best therapist for obsessive-compulsive disorder and pay them privately, hoping to cure my condition. This would enable me to do many things: getting a pet, traveling, going to cafes and restaurants, visiting nature, and much more. Maybe one of these things would make me happier or not, but I could try if I were healthy enough. Story 99. The correct answer is it makes finding happiness easier. It is much easier to enjoy things in life when you are not always looking at prices or worrying if your bank account will suffer because you wanted to treat yourself. It is nice to be able to afford emergencies and other adult responsibilities without struggling just to live. With that said, some studies suggest that the amount of money can be as low as $60,000, give or take, before more money does not make much of a difference in how happy you are. I have known plenty of people who are at least well off financially but are always looking for the next big vacation or luxury item to fill a non-stop void. Conversely, I have met people with little money who are perfectly content with their lives. Story 100. There is a spectrum for that. Being extremely poor does not bring happiness. However, being rich without a hobby or a goal in life is not happiness. I am still recovering from depression, and I can tell you that for most people, a job, whether good or bad, gives them a reason to live their lives, happy or not. Having nothing to live for, no partner, no children, no job, no goal, is not happiness. Story 101. I have 12 ferrets, and I am happy whenever I spend time with them. If I had an endless amount of money, I would build an indoor greenhouse and let them roam free. Story 102. Yes, why? Do you pay all your bills and still have some money left? I don't. So, if I had more money and my bills and debts were taken off the table, I would be happy. This isn't greed. It is common knowledge. Story 103. Not enough money to afford car repair, timely dental and health care, a place to live, and enjoyable experiences. Money can buy safety, security, experiences, and opportunities, which can make one feel happy. With that said, the world has made it so that money is essentially the goal of life. Very few things are free anymore. Story 104. Yes. Whoever says it doesn't, they do not make enough to cover all their expenses and resolve their problems. Story 105. Yes. I can buy everything I like and play everywhere. If you have no money, you just stay at home and drink water. Story 106. It buys things that might make you happy, but if you have a lot of money and it pays your debt, then you can say money can buy you happiness. Story 107. Yes and no. You can finally be free from the shackles of debt and responsibilities, but there are some things that money cannot buy that could fulfill a person's satisfaction, like a loved one, for example. You would be given money as compensation for your loss, but that money cannot bring back a deceased person. Story 108. I could really use about $1,000 right now. Bills need to be paid, and I need to take clothes to the laundromat. I also need a new air conditioner. So many needs. Story 109. To explain this simply, money does not really buy happiness, but it alleviates all the problems that cause unhappiness. Story 110. Money buys convenience, which buys time and opportunities, the real currency of happiness. Truly, happiness comes from within. If you are not content with yourself, no amount of things and activities will make you happy. However, it is much easier to be happy on a yacht in the Caribbean than it is in a gutter full of woes. Story 111. It buys happiness to a certain point but will not fill a void such as lack of relationships or not finding anything one is passionate about. Story 112. I think people with lots of money can be very unhappy for other reasons, so in that sense, money does not buy happiness. However, lack of money can directly cause unhappiness because of the constant stress of making ends meet, going without things, and pending debts. In those situations, the right amount of money can lead to happiness. Story 113. Have you ever paid off a credit card? Sat in first class? Rented a penthouse? Eaten at a fancy restaurant? Then you know they do not buy happiness, but it is close. Story 114. Sure, it can reduce stress and make life easier. That said, one family health crisis and you realize all the money in the world cannot ease your grief. Story 115. Totally not the person who has enough. It is not the money that buys happiness, but the security and stability it provides. So yes, money buys happiness. Story 116, yes. In my case, anyway, freedom from debt and freedom to do what I would like would significantly improve my disposition. Story 117. Having money is not everything. Not having it is. Kanye. By itself, I do not think it buys happiness, but a certain amount helps calm anxiety. Story 118. Depends if the source of the money itself is stress-free and easy. If the effort required to get that money is not worth it, then I am not sure. I had a friend whose parents were both famous doctors. They never took a day off. They were from middle class, so worked hard to get into the rich circle of the city, which they eventually did. They spent their entire life making money and acquiring properties. Both my friend and her sister were taught medicine and surgery, and management in a reserved quota and married off to other doctors who continued the grind. Sometimes it confuses me. What is the purpose? My net worth was much lower than theirs, but I knew I had a much happier, non-mechanical childhood. Being happy and satisfied with little things rather than envying the neighbor's new car. I also realized once you are in the circle, it is always a race. It is never enough, and there is always someone doing better than you. Story 119. The circumstances you were born into determine whether you will have a happy life. Money has nothing to do with true happiness, in my opinion. Story 120. I think money affords you the ability to be happy. We have all heard celebrities say that money is not everything and it did not fix their issues. So, I would say if you find yourself with a windfall, the first thing you should buy is 3 years of weekly therapy sessions with a highly rated professional. Once those 3 years are over, you will have a much better idea of what you actually want that money to do for you. I did the 3 years broke, and I am quite happy somewhere between low and middle class right now. So, if I ended up with millions, the only thing it would change for me is the kind of job I have and the amount I travel. Story 121. Money does not buy happiness. However, it does establish a baseline of security and comfort. Both are components of happiness. Story 122. I think money buys comfort, not happiness. Having enough to cover your needs and not stress about bills definitely makes life easier. Beyond that, it is more about what you do with your time, relationships, and peace of mind. Story 123. Not in the full sense of happiness, but money definitely can alleviate a significant amount of practical anxiety in life, and it can allow you to have the freedom to live your life as you wish. Beyond the point where it does those things, it has very little additional value in terms of increasing happiness. Happiness brought by material things is mostly attained by meeting the initial needs. The jump from renting a poor apartment to owning your own small house where you build equity accounts for most of the happiness gained from property ownership. Upgrading to a large mansion from that small house contributes to only a small remaining portion of happiness. At a certain level of wealth, money can reduce happiness because you actually become a slave to it. Imagine having to go everywhere with security. That is not freedom, that is a form of hell. Some people think it is a status symbol, but it is not. Story 124. Happiness is very subjective. I think money can eliminate financial stress if handled properly. Happiness depends on each individual and what it means to them. Story 125. Money is a tool. When used the right way, it gives you the time to pursue your interests or dreams, which provide you with satisfaction or happiness. It is not the money that gives you satisfaction, but rather the knowledge and security that all your needs are met while engaging in your interests, which makes you happy. You cannot buy back time. Story 126. No. Impossible. You are an eternal being in a temporary vessel. True happiness is not possible in this realm. It is a matter of self-realization. Story 127. It buys security and relief from the crushing anxiety of how am I going to pay this bill. Look at all these millionaires and billionaires around the world. They just seem like absolutely miserable people trying to use money to fill a hole in their empty lives. Many of them seem to only care about making more money, long after they have passed the threshold of being able to provide a life of luxury and more money than they could ever spend. The whole thing just seems gross. Story 128. It buys security, which is a long-term investment. Happiness, meanwhile, is subjective and fleeting. Story 129. I'm not saying it does, but I would be a lot happier if I could comfortably afford a house with some extra money left over after bills and taxes. Story 130. Money has saved my life countless times, especially during my civil war. Money and influence can get you much farther than most things in life. Story 131. Money does not buy happiness, but it does prevent the unhappiness that comes from not having enough money. There is a very large sweet spot between too little and too much money. Either causes real problems. Story 132. Simply put, on its own, no. Money is an abstraction of wealth that enables access to various resources in life. Happiness is a state of mind. You can be incredibly poor and happy, or incredibly wealthy and miserable. With that said, those are edge cases in my opinion. Most of the incredibly poor are not as happy as they could be. Most of the incredibly wealthy are not as miserable as they would be without their wealth. Money brings access to fulfill all your needs and most of your reasonably attainable wants. You need a foundation of something reasonably attainable for money to help. In addition, the things you want cannot be in direct conflict. Money can only buy so much of your time, but at some point, you only have so many hours in the day. Your wants may come into conflict with one another in terms of time or goals. Sure, you can offload tasks like getting food, preparing it, maintaining your house, working, and so on. Those could disappear. But now you have about 16 hours to do what you want. You cannot pay someone to use the restroom for you, nor can you pay them to work out for you. That is something you have to prioritize and manage with your resources to enable your happiness. Story 133. Absolutely not. Once you have enough to live comfortably, there is no real gain from extra money after that. I personally know. Story 134. I have a friend who owns a cabin on the Shenandoah River. There was a man who lived near the cabin who won $30 million in the Powerball lottery. He was very lonely and had no friends. After he won, he bought his son an expensive sports car. The boy wrecked it and was paralyzed. After that, the man spent his days drinking beer and taking pills. He invited us to his house once, and he checked his answering machine. Every message was from a woman, each asking for money. There were at least 6 different women requesting money. A few years ago, they found him dead in the woods after he wrecked his all-terrain vehicle. Story 135. Definitely up to a certain point. If working becomes an option for you instead of a necessity, you will have a much better life. Today, you need about $5 million to do that comfortably. People who say money does not buy happiness are talking about those who have excessive amounts of wealth. Once you have pretty much everything, a better car, a better house, or a better boat will not fix you if you are unhappy with yourself and your relationships. But that is a problem very few of us have. Story 136. Only to a point. Once needs are met and there is a little extra for fun, you have to work on yourself for the rest. Story 137. Well, the time I am not unhappy is potentially the time I can be happy. Also, being worried is being unhappy. Right now, I may not be able to go out and socialize because I need to watch the budget. In the 22 years that I have earned my own money, I have been on vacation exactly once. I do worry about losing my job because it would probably take some time to find a new one. I cannot spend as much time with my loved ones because I need to work more. And I am feeling a little uneasy because the car has to go into service. My hobbies all have to be inexpensive, which makes it hard to maintain friendships with people who can spend money on theirs. These are all sources of unhappiness that having extra money would easily fix. We are not talking millions here, just a 15% raise, but of course the union settled at inflation for 2 years. Having a spare couple of $1,000s around would enable all that plus some extras. Inviting cherished friends to dinner, little anniversary presents, visiting an actual beach. I can only imagine how much worse all that would be in places without socialized healthcare and collective bargaining, where you are basically one reckless driver away from complete ruin. Story 138. It relieves many stresses in life. For example, being able to pay your bills and mortgage at the end of the month alleviates stress. You can also pay off debt. However, if you are rich and spend money only on material things such as clothes and flashy cars, it does not necessarily bring happiness. If you have enough money, you can live comfortably and travel where you want. So, money does buy happiness to the extent that it provides stability. However, being a billionaire or having anything beyond what you need does not buy happiness, as you may feel depressed or like an imposter if you have too much. Story 139. Happiness? In some situations, it can be contentment. Now, easy access to money breeds anxiety of loss unless you are born into wealth, and that anxiety breeds suspicion too. If you are born into wealth, it breeds suspicion and closes off opportunities for immersion with most people with whom you interact, unless they are from similar backgrounds. Then your anxiety is about fitting in personally. Some care if they do. Others become power mad and relish the belief they are better. Happiness does not come from money, but money can eliminate barriers to happiness. Everyone struggles with happiness in different ways. Happiness is the security that you will be okay, that your friends love you and will be there for you, as you will be for them. Happiness is having a community open and honest enough to share ideas and help each other with real matters. It does not matter if you wear Gucci or Dollar General sale rack, and it does not matter that some groups have it better financially. Story 140. Happiness? Not directly and maybe not at all. If the things that are making someone unhappy can be solved with money, then it can indirectly bring happiness, or more accurately, it can remove or alleviate some things that were making you unhappy. But you do not become happy by taking things away. You have to add something. Money might help you get there. Story 141. Yes, it does. For one thing, time is money, but also money is time. If you always have enough money to take care of yourself, then you do not have to waste every day of your life constantly working just to survive and pay bills. That means you can now spend all of that spare time pursuing the things in life that you are passionate about and truly love, rather than just surviving day to day. Story 142. It doesn't buy happiness, but it allows you to live comfortably and with fewer worries about being unable to afford groceries, health emergencies, braces, eyeglasses, and more. Story 143. It buys peace of mind, and that goes very far when it comes to one's well-being. When we talk about the United States, this is especially true because everything costs money here. Healthcare is expensive, decent food costs are high, and housing costs much more than they did 10, 20, or 30 years ago compared to one's income. So yes, money really can buy happiness. Story 144. Because the market more than anything sells happiness, whether it is a short-term alleviation from distress or a simple solution to a common problem. Not having the money for those solutions is the most common source of misery in people. If you have some money, it is harder to buy happiness, but if you have no money, it is shocking how little money happiness costs. Story 145. Money does not buy happiness. If you are not happy with what you have, you will not be happy with more. This is a cliché for a reason. The wealthiest man I have ever known was also one of the saddest. He even told me he was well aware that if his money all went away, so would his friends. Story 146. It buys you peace of mind. If you are not working yourself into an early grave just to pay the rent, worried all the time, this is not the way to live. Having money will always make one happy. Story 147. For as long as this question has been asked, I've always said it depends on what you do with it. If you are smart with a large sum of money capable of making you independently wealthy, do not go on a spending spree buying cars, houses, recreational vehicles, jewelry, elaborate vacations, and so on. Do not let anyone know. And if you have to explain, say you made some recent investments that paid off and you can now live off that. Any more details are nobody's business. Money can buy freedom and peace of mind, long-term stability, and offer you choices for your life beyond work. I have always wanted to do charitable things and share if I had any substantial amount of money. I know what it is like to have nothing and lose sleep wondering how and if it will work out. I still do. If I could help people in those same situations, that would make me happy. So yes, money buys happiness. Story 148. I think it plays a part in the puzzle. I do not think there is any one thing that can give you true happiness. I think health, family, and relationships, money, and actually enjoying what you do for a living are all the main things that contribute. If you only have one but not the others, you will not be happy. If you have all of them but lack one, you also will not be truly happy. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.